So we launched the Parity Pact last year in 2022 with the idea that women didn't have the place they deserved in tech yet. At that time, we just released the French Tech 120 Next 40, and only 7 female were leading one of those companies, and none of them were CEOs of the Next 40 companies, which are the top 40 tech companies in France. With this in mind, we gathered all the entrepreneurs and we thought, okay, what can we do, every one of them, to increase the speed of reaching parity in tech in their companies. There was a bunch of different workshops where people really shared what had worked, what had not worked in their respective companies, and after that we came together and agreed on what are the top 5 things we want to implement because they would have the best impact. The idea of the Parity Pact was to work on the entire chain that leads to the situation we know today, where we don't have enough female CEOs in tech, where we don't have enough female managers in tech, where we don't have enough female in general in the startups. So we started with representation. How do we make sure we have more role models, female role models, internally and externally for the company? Recruitment. How do we make sure that the recruiting processes are completely inclusive, including the job description, which is sometimes something that doesn't work today. Third, training managers on understanding the biases that everyone has. Everyone has biases when it comes to gender. I have biases, you have biases, everyone. So the idea was to train all the managers of the company so they're aware of those biases and they can act on them. Finally, really thinking, once we've attracted those women, we've recruited them, we've helped them to progress in the company, how to make sure that we have all the right processes in place when it comes to paternity or maternity leave, which in a company like a startup, because everything moves so fast, if you take a few months off, things are going to be very different when we come back, so you have to think very carefully on how you re-onboard parents. And last but not least, this idea to have quotas when it comes to boards, because only 20% of the companies of the Next 40 French Tech 120 had female on their boards, and this is also something that is really important, because if you don't have the example at the top, how can you have more female in the entire company? We've worked with the companies on making sure that we can help and support the implementation of the measures that we have in the pact, because that's our role at Mission French Tech, is to really gather, support, help companies move forward. So we had a bunch of different workshops where some companies were explaining what type of process they've put in place for maternity leave, or what types of companies they had worked with to train all their managers. And fast forward where we are today, so 9 or 10 months after we launched this Parity Pact, we're very excited because we already see some of the concrete impact of this pact, with more than 2/3 of the companies who have implemented fully one of the 5 commitments, and more than 60% who have implemented already 3 or 5. And some of them have already implemented all the 5 commitments, even if some of the commitments were for much later, especially the board quotas is something that we had decided to work on over the course of the next 5 years. But for example, Devialet, which is one of the company of the Next 40, during their last fundraising, they went to raise funds with this commitment in mind, and they managed to really reach parity in their board well ahead before the deadline. So we are pretty excited about how things are evolving, even though things don't move fast enough in tech in general when it comes to reaching parity, and that's something we continue to be completely committed towards. But to give you a few examples, we had a company like Conto announcing just a little earlier this week that they went from 30 to 40% female employees. Now they've implemented everything that we worked on with the pact. We have a bunch of testimony in the same direction, so this is definitely having an impact. But tech as a whole, and especially French tech, or I mean French tech as other part of the world, is still not moving fast enough in this direction, and that's why this year we're also empowering the network of communities and capital to really bring all the ecosystem together to accelerate on parity. And we are pleased to see that communities like Taiwan are doing events in that respect, because we need everyone to be committed if we want to see things move faster. On this very special day, which is International Women's Day, I want to tell all the women who are listening to us that Tech is here for you to join. We really need you. We need you to build all the innovations of tomorrow, because we can't accept that those innovations, those technology will be built without women. And this is because of equality, but this is also because of performance. And we know that together we will build much better companies, much better product, much better technologies. So our role is to make sure that we can contribute to make this ecosystem as inclusive as possible for you to feel welcome. And we will continue working and pushing towards this. So please join us in this journey.